Mass Effect is famous for its big decisions, especially in the first game when they hadn't realised they'd have to follow through on the consequences of your world-altering decisions. Looking at you, Rachni Queen. To me, the most interesting of these decisions, and the one that still gives me pause on every playthrough, is the choice between your two human squad mates in Mass Effect 1. Towards the end of the game, a situation arises that means you can only save one of them, either Ashley or Kaidan. The other will die, and there's nothing you can do about it. A lot of choices in Mass Effect are unfairly boiled down to the good and bad choice, or rather, the Paragon and the Renegade choice using the game's own terminology, where one is the morally good choice and one is the morally bad choice. But here in Mass Effect 1, the choices are usually not that clear-cut. Kaidan or Ashley stands out especially as the choice that has no right or wrong answer. That doesn't mean that people won't argue to the walls about which choice is right and wrong, but to me that never-ending argument is proof of what interesting choice it is. The fact that people can feel so strongly about it in opposing ways is the proof that there is no correct answer. Here's our two main arguments. This is what pretty much every single one of these debates will boil down to. Kaidan is boring. Ashley is racist. I don't necessarily disagree with either of these assessments, but one seems a little bit more severe than the other. Kaidan is by far and away the most normal of normal guys in the squads. He's pretty well adjusted, he has a kind of dark backstory, but not that dark. Who hasn't murdered a bad teacher every now and then with their mind? We've all been there. I actually like Kaidan a lot. Kaidan is like me if I were in space. He's kind of weird and socially awkward in a way that's kind of endearing. Also, he's Canadian, so that's an obvious plus. Actually being racist is a bit more of an issue than being boring, if you were to ask me, and I think it's an issue worth exploring in more detail. I mean, let's start with asking the question, is she actually racist? Why, yes. Yes, she is. That being the case, and assuming you agree that racism is bad, what exactly is the case for keeping her alive anyway? Well, it's complicated. Let's start with the basics. Who is Ashley? Ashley Williams is a soldier in the Alliance military who comes from a career military family. As she says, her father, grandfather, and great-grandmother all served. She comes from a large and religious family on Earth, but her family also harbours a great shame. Her grandfather, General Williams, is infamous in the military for the only surrender in human history to an alien force, surrendering the city of Shang-Chi during the First Contact War, a short conflict between humans and Turians when they made first contact. Because of this disgrace, Ashley has always been put on the bad assignments, protecting middle-of-nowhere colonies and always being overlooked for promotion despite a perfect record. That's when you first meet Ashley, during the first mission of the game where Eden Prime, a regular backwater, is attacked and she helps you protect the colony. In sharp contrast to Kaidan, Ashley is hot-headed and short-tempered, with a penchant for sarcasm and a love of poetry. She's a potential love interest for Male Shepherd, and yes, she's also a bit of a racist. So what exactly do I mean when I say that Ashley is racist? Because there are plenty of people that will dispute the claim. And in fairness, racism isn't really the right word to use, it just flows off the tongue a little better than xenophobic. The argument that Ashley is racist primarily comes from two pieces of evidence. One is this ambient light you can see on the Citadel.
I can't tell the aliens from the animals.
And the second is this conversation early in the game where she voices her discomfort with having aliens aboard the ship, in which she uses the metaphor of sicking your dog on a bear to our relationship with aliens.
Look, if you're fighting a bear and the only way for you to survive is to sick your dog on it and run, you'll do it. As much as you love your dog, it isn't human. It's not racism, not really. Members of their species will always be more important to them than humans are.
You know, Ashley, I don't think I would sick my dog on a bear. I really don't think he'd be much of a distraction anyway. Out of context, these clips are pretty damning, and there are smaller moments in the game that enforce this kind of thing when she does some, what we can charitably call microaggressions.
Drop the gun, Krogan.
Ashley is the only squad mate to draw a gun on Rex when he does this, and the way she puts the emphasis on the word Krogan, not using his name but his species, well, it's a classic microaggression, folks.
I am familiar with the legend of Asari promiscuity, but those rumors have little basis in fact.
Hey, want me to ask her about her sex life? Might be illuminating.
One of the first things Ashley says about Liara is to do with her sex life, something that Liara explains is a constant annoyance for Asari, immediately leaning into stereotypes about Asari with no consideration for how it comes across.
Look at that bug thing over there. What's doing?
Ashley, that bug thing is clearly wearing a little safety vest and a backpack. Maybe thing is not the correct verbiage here. For what it's worth, Ashley gets defensive if you accuse her of being a racist, and much later on in the game when you meet a representative of the Terra Firma Party, aka the anti-alien party, she's got nothing but spite for them. It's clear that Ashley doesn't consider herself to be the same as these guys, but that doesn't mean if it came down to the wire she'd rule out voting for them. My point here is not to cancel Ashley. There's a frustrating trend right now of talking about fictional characters and treating them like they're real people, which is an immensely unhelpful perspective. I remember a Twitter thread from a while back about how sex scenes are immoral because the characters didn't consent to being filmed, which is ludicrous. But if you continue to treat characters like they're real people and judge them by the standards you would judge real people, that is a logical conclusion. Ashley is racist because the writers wrote her that way, and so it's worth asking why they would do that. It's not an overly endearing quality to give to a character, so there must be a reason for it. The systems for squad mates evolve considerably over the course of the trilogy, but here in Mass Effect 1, they are very utilitarian. They still have personalities that shine through, of course, but you can clearly see what each companion is supposed to be doing within the game, and Ashley is no different. Every companion in Mass Effect 1 serves two functions. One is to be an ambassador of their culture. Mass Effect 1 is the introduction to a new setting, so each companion will tell you about their own backstories and the backstories of their people. Rex is here to tell you about the Krogan and the Rebellions and the Genophage. Garrus is here to tell you about the Turians and their military culture and CSEC. Tali is here to tell you about Quarians and Geth and the migrant fleet. Ashley and Kaidan also do this for specific aspects of human culture in the setting. Kaidan tells you about biotics, the magic space powers, and their place in the wider galaxy, while Ashley offers the perspective of a typical soldier. Part of her mistrust of aliens comes from a lack of experience with aliens. She spent most of her life in human space, whereas the more open-minded Kaidan has been around aliens since he was a kid. The second function of each companion is tied with the Paragon Renegade system. Each companion is clearly assigned to either Paragon or Renegade, so that no matter which way you play, you will end up in some form of conflict with some of the companions. Kaidan, Liara, and Tali are the Paragon companions. They're generally good folks who want to do good in the world and are nice, respectful, and not overly forceful in their personality. Garrus, Rex, and Ashley are the Renegade companions. They're still good guys because Renegade doesn't mean evil, it means anti-hero. They just have slightly more bullish personalities and different ways of doing things that don't necessarily align with the law. The reason it's set up this way is to facilitate roleplay. By splitting the companions one way or the other, the game is ensuring that no matter which way you lean, you will come into conflict with some of these companions. Because conflict is the best way to let a player define their shepherd's personality and beliefs. Garrus goes on about his cop on the edge end justifies the means nonsense, so that either a renegade shepherd can agree with him, or, more importantly, so that a paragon shepherd can disagree with him. Ashley's racism serves exactly the same purpose. It exists so that a paragon shepherd can oppose it and be the champion of virtue and cooperation. And the opposite is true as well, of course. You can play Shepard as an alien racist. In fact, you can play Shepard as a much worse racist than Ashley. When the Terra Firma guy shows up, you can support his campaign.
Do you take pleasure from committing genocide, Shepard?
Depends on the species, Turian.
There is a mindset that it's very hard to access once you've played the trilogy, because the very first time you play this game, you're not necessarily supposed to trust the aliens either. Something which I think Mass Effect 1 does especially well is making humanity feel like outsiders. In the timeline of the game, it's been less than 30 years since first contact with aliens, which is a short enough period of time that most people would have been born before aliens were a thing. From the outside looking in, the Citadel Council is a pretty suspicious and untrustworthy organisation. Of the many races in the galaxy, only 3 of them are able to serve on the Council, yet they get to dictate the rules and laws for everyone else in the galaxy? That seems a bit suspicious. While both the player and Ashley can express mistrust for aliens, the opposite is also true. Aliens will constantly snip at you and say mean comments to you and mistrust you because you're human throughout the game. The villain of the game is explicitly an anti-human extremist. A Paragon's path is to go above their petty squandering and prove them wrong, where a Renegade's path is to more sort of sink to their level, and if they're not going to help you, then you're not going to help them. So, when we talk about Ashley being racist, It is true, but it's not the whole story. It doesn't have the same connotations that racism does in our real world. The council races run the galaxy, and the humans are just a small part of that galaxy. Skepticism of the council races is not completely unwarranted. The reason this viewpoint fades from memory is that the plot of the sequel games eventually proves it inaccurate. The entire plot of the third game is gathering every race together to fight a greater threat. Once you've played the game even once, you know exactly who you can trust and who you can't. You know that having Garrus and Rex on the ship is not an issue in any way, and thus Ashley's mistrust of them looks worse. Garrus is your BFF, and Rex is the saviour of the Krogan people. If you can get back into that pre-trilogy mindset where you truly know nothing about the setting or what's going to happen, then you can see that Ashley's skepticism has some merit to it. The First Contact war that her grandfather fought in, it wasn't pretty. Even this line, probably her worst defense.
I can't tell the aliens from the animals.
Be honest, would you seriously look at this and automatically assume that it's a person? Of course you wouldn't. It's a big stupid jellyfish. It's still not something I would recommend verbalizing, but I think it's a positive that the game includes voices like this. It's not something you should say, but for Ashley, someone who's never been to the Citadel and never met Hanar before, it's something she would say. With all that said, is she still worth condemning to death on Vermeer for being racist? Is having a good justification an excuse for her attitude? I don't know if I get to make that call or not, frankly, but I can tell you that it's not an attitude she clings to. Another common trend is that people tend to judge characters by their first impression. Being a Scrooge means you hate Christmas, even though by the end of the story Ebenezer Scrooge loves Christmas. Ashley starts off the series with a bigotry towards aliens, but that's not all that she is, nor is it a trait that she keeps for the entire series. Even towards the end of the first game, she's learned a newfound respect for the alien crew members, learned to trust them with her life. In Mass Effect 2, she has a massive distrust and hatred for the human-centric group Cerberus despite espousing the same philosophy that she used to believe. She grows as a person, she changes, she gets a truly awful redesign in Mass Effect 3. But only if she lives. I don't really like Ashley. Less so because of the racism and more so because of the quoting poetry at me. I mean, there's only so much abuse I can take. But my personal dislike for her doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, the decision between her and Kaidan is still an immensely difficult one. If you choose Kaidan, then Ashley's story is over. And vice versa, of course, but this is a video about Ashley, so sorry, Kaidan. The choice on Vermeer doesn't matter if you don't care about these characters, if they don't feel real, and there's nothing that makes a character feel more real than flaws. So yes, Ashley is a bit racist, but that's not all that she is, and that's not all that she has to be.
It should have been me, Commander. You know that.
It wasn't your call, Williams. I had to choose. I chose you.
Thank you for watching, and a very special thank you to my wonderful patrons for your continued support. If you'd like to see your name up here or get access to Patreon exclusive videos, then you can find that link in the description below, or wait for the magic box to appear, or sign up for my new channel memberships as well. Along with this video, I'll be releasing a companion video where I make my pitch for what I would do with a Mass Effect game, so if that sounds interesting, then you can find that on the things I just said. But here on YouTube, I also have some other Mass Effect videos that may be interesting to you. If you want another deep dive on a companion, then why not this video about everyone's favourite, Jacob Taylor? Everyone loves him. Or for something else, why not this video about Mass Effect Andromeda and why it's actually good?